Heraclitus of Ephesus is one of the most fascinating and elusive figures in the history of philosophy. Known as the Weeping Philosopher or the Obscure One, he left behind a legacy that continues to puzzle and inspire thinkers to this day. Unlike many of his contemporaries, whose works have survived in a more complete form, Heraclitus' teachings exist only in fragments, preserved mainly through the writings of later philosophers such as Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. This fragmented nature of his philosophy adds to the mystery surrounding him, making it challenging to reconstruct his exact views with certainty. Nevertheless, his influence on Western thought is undeniable, shaping subsequent discussions on metaphysics, logic, and the nature of change. Born around 535 BCE in the city of Ephesus, a prominent Greek settlement in Ionia, Heraclitus lived during a time of intellectual flourishing. The region of Ionia was home to some of the earliest philosophical inquiries, with thinkers like Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes seeking to understand the fundamental nature of reality. However, Heraclitus distanced himself from these earlier thinkers, criticizing their approaches and offering a radically different perspective on existence. He rejected the notion of a single, static principle governing the cosmos and instead proposed a universe in constant flux. This idea, often summarized by the phrase pi nu tau alpha epsilon, pana re, meaning everything flows, became the cornerstone of his philosophy. Despite his philosophical brilliance, Heraclitus was known for his disdainful attitude toward his contemporaries and the general public. He believed that most people were incapable of understanding the true nature of reality, blinded by their reliance on superficial knowledge and societal conventions. His writings reflect a deep skepticism toward popular beliefs, religious rituals, and even other philosophers, whom he often dismissed as lacking true wisdom. This intellectual isolation contributed to his reputation as a solitary and melancholic figure, one who preferred contemplation over public discourse. Heraclitus' enigmatic nature extends beyond his personal life and into the style of his writing. His book, which was reportedly deposited in the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, was written in a highly obscure and cryptic manner. His use of paradoxes, metaphors, and riddles made his philosophy difficult to interpret, even for those who encountered it firsthand. Ancient commentators often struggled with his dense and poetic language, leading to multiple and sometimes conflicting interpretations of his ideas. This complexity has led some scholars to view him as a mystical thinker, while others see him as a rationalist with a rigorous, albeit unconventional, approach to philosophy. One of the most enduring aspects of Heraclitus' thought is his concept of logos, a term that roughly translates to word, reason, or principle. He argued that the universe operates according to a rational order, which he called the logos, yet most people fail to recognize or comprehend it. While his precise meaning remains debated, later philosophers, including the Stoics and early Christian theologians, adapted and expanded upon this concept, giving it theological and ethical dimensions. The idea that an underlying rationality governs the cosmos remains a central theme in many philosophical and scientific discussions today. Another defining feature of Heraclitus' philosophy is his doctrine of opposites. He saw conflict and tension as fundamental to existence, arguing that seemingly contradictory forces are, in fact, necessary for harmony. War is the father of all things, he famously declared, suggesting that struggle and change are essential components of reality. This perspective challenged the conventional wisdom of his time, which often sought stability and unity in nature. Instead, Heraclitus embraced dynamism and transformation, seeing them as the driving forces of existence. Heraclitus' influence extended far beyond his lifetime, leaving an indelible mark on the development of Western philosophy. While many of his ideas were later refined or reinterpreted, his emphasis on change, opposition, and rational order resonated with thinkers across different eras. Plato and Aristotle both engaged with his work, albeit critically, and the Stoics found inspiration in his notion of logos. In the modern era, philosophers such as Friedrich Nietzsche admired Heraclitus' bold vision of a world in constant motion, contrasting it with the static metaphysics of thinkers like Parmenides. Despite his impact, Heraclitus remains a philosopher of paradoxes. His insights are both profound and cryptic, his writings both illuminating and elusive. He challenges readers to question their assumptions, embrace uncertainty, and recognize the ever-changing nature of reality. Unlike many philosophers who sought to provide clear and systematic explanations, Heraclitus seemed to revel in ambiguity, compelling his audience to engage in deep reflection rather than passive acceptance. In many ways, Heraclitus embodies the essence of philosophical inquiry, an unrelenting pursuit of truth that resists easy categorization. His legacy endures not because his ideas offer simple answers, but because they continue to provoke thought and debate. The mystery surrounding his life and work only adds to his allure, making him one of the most intriguing figures in intellectual history. Heraclitus was born around 535 BCE in the city of Ephesus, a major Greek settlement in Ionia, located on the western coast of what is now modern-day Turkey. Ephesus was a prosperous city, known for its wealth, commerce, and cultural advancements. It was home to the great Temple of Artemis, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, and was a center of both religious worship and intellectual exchange. Heraclitus grew up in an environment where philosophical inquiry was flourishing, yet he developed a distinct and often critical stance toward the prevailing ideas of his time. Very little is known about Heraclitus' early life, but historical accounts suggest that he came from an aristocratic family. Some sources claim that he was in line to inherit a high political position in Ephesus, but chose to renounce it, preferring a life of contemplation over one of power and governance. His rejection of political authority reflects a broader theme in his philosophy: his deep skepticism toward societal structures and the common understanding of wisdom. Unlike other philosophers of his era who engaged in civic life, Heraclitus distanced himself from public affairs, retreating in an intellectual solitude. The intellectual landscape of Ionia during Heraclitus' lifetime was marked by the emergence of early philosophical thought. Before him, the Milesian philosophers Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes had sought to explain the nature of reality by identifying a single, fundamental principle, arche, from which everything else emerged. Thales proposed that water was the primary substance. Anaximenes suggested air, and Anaximander speculated about an indefinite principle called the apeiron. Heraclitus, however, dismissed these materialistic explanations, arguing that the universe was not static, but rather in a state of continuous transformation. This rejection of his predecessors' views contributed to Heraclitus' reputation as a solitary and difficult thinker. Unlike Pythagoras, who established a following and created a structured philosophical school, Heraclitus did not seek disciples or form an organized system of thought. In fact, he expressed disdain for most other philosophers, including Pythagoras, whom he accused of merely accumulating knowledge without true understanding. His philosophy was not concerned with assembling facts, but with grasping the deeper reality behind existence. Heraclitus' relationship with his fellow citizens in Ephesus was similarly strained. According to later accounts, he viewed the people of Ephesus as ignorant and lacking wisdom. He criticized their political decisions and, in one famous episode, allegedly condemned the city's leaders for exiling a prominent statesman named Hermodorus. His harsh judgments led him to withdraw even further from public life, reinforcing his image as a philosopher who lived in isolation. Some ancient sources even depict him as a reclusive figure, spending his final years wandering the mountains and suffering from physical ailments. The perception of Heraclitus as a melancholic thinker is partly derived from later interpretations of his philosophy. He is sometimes referred to as the weeping philosopher, a label that contrasts with the more cheerful and optimistic image of Democritus, the laughing philosopher. This characterization, however, may be an exaggeration, as Heraclitus' writings do not convey mere sorrow, but rather a profound and critical perspective on the world. His view of existence as a constant struggle and flux may have been unsettling, but it was not necessarily a cause for despair. Rather, it was a fundamental truth that he sought to illuminate. One of the most significant aspects of Heraclitus' historical context is the cultural and political climate of Ionia. The region was heavily influenced by Persian rule during his lifetime, as the Achaemenid Empire expanded its control over Greek city-states in Asia Minor. The tension between Greek traditions and Persian governance created an atmosphere of uncertainty and change, themes that resonate deeply with Heraclitus' philosophy. His emphasis on flux and the unity of opposites can be seen as a response to the instability of his era, reflecting a worldview shaped by constant transformation and conflict. Religious thought also played a crucial role in the intellectual environment of Heraclitus' time. Traditional Greek mythology, as presented by poets such as Homer and Hesiod, dominated popular beliefs, but these narratives were increasingly challenged by early philosophers who sought natural explanations for cosmic phenomena. Heraclitus rejected both the literal interpretations of myth and the ritualistic practices of conventional religion. He did not deny the existence of the divine, but instead conceived of a cosmic order governed by the logos, an underlying principle that transcended anthropomorphic gods and superstitions. Despite his reclusive nature and critical disposition, Heraclitus' ideas did not fade into obscurity. His work, though written in an obscure and fragmented style, was preserved and discussed by later philosophers. The Temple of Artemis, where he is said to have deposited his book, symbolized not only his detachment from society, but also his belief that true wisdom was accessible only to those who sought it with deep reflection. Unlike Socrates, who engaged in public debate, or Plato, who structured his teachings in dialogues, Heraclitus left behind cryptic aphorisms that required interpretation. This approach ensured that his philosophy would remain a subject of fascination and debate for centuries to come. Heraclitus' life and historical context are inseparable from his philosophy. His aristocratic background, rejection of political life, intellectual solitude, and the turbulent era in which he lived all contributed to his radical vision of reality. He was not merely a theorist of change. He embodied it in his very approach to thought and existence. His disdain for conventional wisdom and his belief in a deeper cosmic order set him apart from his predecessors, making him one of the most original thinkers of the ancient world. Heraclitus is best known for his doctrine of flux, encapsulated in the famous phrase, pi nu tau alpha epsilon, pana re, meaning everything flows. Although this exact phrase does not appear in the surviving fragments, it accurately reflects his central belief that the universe is in a state of constant change. According to Heraclitus, nothing remains fixed. All things are in perpetual motion, transforming into something else. This idea stands in sharp contrast to the views of earlier philosophers who sought a single, unchanging principle underlying reality. For Heraclitus, the essence of existence was not stability, but transformation. The doctrine of flux is best illustrated by one of Heraclitus' most famous statements. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. This fragment reveals the dynamic nature of reality. A river appears to be a fixed entity, yet its waters are constantly flowing, making it different at every moment. Similarly, human beings are continuously changing, shaped by time, experience, and internal transformations. Heraclitus challenges the illusion of permanence, arguing that change is not an exception, but the fundamental rule of existence. This notion of constant flux extends beyond the physical world to human life and society. Heraclitus believed that personal identity, political structures, and even knowledge itself were subject to change. He criticized those who clung to outdated beliefs, arguing that wisdom requires an understanding of the ever-changing nature of reality. For Heraclitus, true insight comes from recognizing that stability is an illusion and that embracing change is the key to understanding the world. Heraclitus' theory of flux also applies to the cosmos. Unlike the Milesian philosophers who sought to identify a single element as the primary substance of the universe, Heraclitus argued that reality is in a continuous process of becoming. He rejected the idea of a static universe governed by fixed laws and instead proposed a world characterized by transformation and opposition. In this view, change is not merely a chaotic or random occurrence, but follows a deeper order governed by the logos, a concept central to his philosophy. The implications of Heraclitus' doctrine of flux extend to human perception and knowledge. He believed that most people fail to grasp the true nature of reality because they seek stability where there is none. This is evident in another of his famous fragments. Eyes and ears are bad witnesses for men if they have barbarous souls. Here, Heraclitus suggests that perception alone is insufficient for understanding reality. Without deeper reflection and wisdom, individuals remain blind to the fundamental nature of change. His philosophy demands intellectual effort, urging people to move beyond superficial appearances and recognize the underlying transformations that govern existence. Heraclitus' emphasis on change also has ethical and existential dimensions. If everything is in flux, how should individuals live their lives? While his philosophy does not provide a rigid ethical system, it implies that human beings must adapt to change rather than resist it. To live wisely is to align oneself with the natural order of transformation, embracing uncertainty rather than clinging to false security. This perspective influenced later thinkers, particularly the Stoics, who saw Heraclitus as a precursor to their doctrine of accepting fate and living in harmony with nature. Despite its profound insights, Heraclitus' doctrine of flux was met with resistance by later philosophers. Plato, for instance, was highly critical of Heraclitus' ideas, arguing that if everything is in constant change, knowledge itself becomes impossible. For Plato, true knowledge could only be attained through unchanging, eternal forms, which stood in stark contrast to Heraclitus' vision of a fluid and ever-changing reality. This philosophical tension between change and permanence would shape much of Western thought, influencing debates between rationalism and empiricism, idealism and materialism. Heraclitus' ideas were also contrasted with those of Parmenides, another Presocratic philosopher who argued for the exact opposite view. Parmenides claimed that change was an illusion and that reality was a single, unchanging whole. For him, what appears to be transformation is merely a deception of the senses. This stark opposition between Heraclitus and Parmenides represents one of the earliest and most fundamental debates in philosophy. Is reality defined by change or permanence? This debate would later influence thinkers such as Aristotle, who sought to reconcile these opposing views by distinguishing between potentiality and actuality. The doctrine of flux continues to be relevant in contemporary philosophical discussions. In modern science, the idea that everything is in motion finds strong parallels in quantum physics, thermodynamics, and evolutionary biology. The discovery that particles constantly fluctuate, that entropy drives change in physical systems, and that biological species evolve over time all resonate with Heraclitus' ancient insights. His philosophy anticipates a dynamic universe rather than a static one, making him remarkably ahead of his time. Heraclitus' doctrine of flux presents a radical and transformative view of reality. By asserting that everything is in constant motion, he challenges human perceptions, philosophical traditions, and ethical attitudes. His insights continue to influence modern thought, inviting us to reconsider our understanding of permanence and change. As we move forward in this exploration of Heraclitus' philosophy, we will next examine his theory of opposites, another cornerstone of his thought that further deepens our understanding of his vision of the universe. One of the most distinctive and profound aspects of Heraclitus' philosophy is his doctrine of the unity of opposites. According to him, reality is characterized not by harmony in the conventional sense, but by the dynamic interplay of opposing forces. He argued that contradiction is not a sign of disorder, but rather an essential feature of existence. This idea fundamentally challenges the notion that stability and consistency are necessary for understanding the world. Instead, Heraclitus suggests that reality is defined by continuous conflict, yet this conflict produces order and balance. A central fragment that illustrates this idea states, "War is the father of all things and the king of all. Some he makes gods, others men. Some he makes slaves, others free." Here, Heraclitus presents strife and opposition as creative forces. Far from being destructive, conflict is what gives rise to differentiation and transformation. Without opposition, there would be no movement, no progress, and no distinction between things. This notion is deeply embedded in many natural and human phenomena, from the struggle for survival in nature to the political tensions that shape history. Another famous fragment reads, "The way up and the way down are one and the same." This paradoxical statement captures the idea that seemingly opposite paths are actually interconnected. Ascending and descending appear to be opposite movements, but they are part of the same process. The river that flows downward eventually rises again as vapor. The sun that sets will inevitably rise again. This principle can be applied not only to physical processes but also to human experiences. Failure and success, life and death, growth and decay are all part of a continuous cycle rather than absolute states. HERACLITUS also extends this principle to human perception and experience. In one of his most enigmatic fragments, he states, "Cold things warm up, warm things cool down. Wet things dry, parched things get wet." This suggests that all states of being are transient, and that opposites are not rigidly separate, but rather interconnected stages of a process. Heat and cold, life and death, youth and old age are not isolated conditions, but transitions in an ongoing cycle. This perspective challenges the human tendency to categorize things in absolute terms, urging us to see the fluidity of existence. Perhaps the most famous expression of the unity of opposites is found in Heraclitus' discussion of harmony through tension. He uses the analogy of a bow and a lyre, stating, "They do not understand that what differs agrees with itself." It is an attunement of opposite tensions, like that of the bow and the lyre. A bow requires tension between its two ends to function, just as a lyre needs opposing forces in its strings to produce music. This insight reveals that balance is achieved not through the absence of opposition, but through its proper management. The most stable and functional systems are those that incorporate opposing forces in a way that maintains equilibrium. This doctrine has profound implications for human life and ethics. Heraclitus suggests that suffering and joy, good and evil, life and death are not absolute categories but necessary counterparts. Without suffering, we would not recognize joy. Without death, life would have no meaning. This insight encourages a perspective that embraces challenges and hardships as essential components of existence, rather than as mere obstacles to be avoided. It aligns with later philosophical traditions, particularly Stoicism, which teaches that wisdom consists in accepting and working with the natural order rather than resisting it. Heraclitus' unity of opposites also extends to political and social philosophy. He believed that conflict is an inherent and necessary part of governance and societal development. Unlike utopian thinkers who envisioned an ideal state of harmony, Heraclitus saw political struggle as a source of progress. His belief that war is the father of all things can be interpreted as an acknowledgement that political conflict, rather than being an unfortunate deviation from order, is actually the driving force behind change and improvement. This perspective foreshadows later theories of dialectical development, such as those found in Hegel and Marx. Despite its deep insights, Heraclitus' doctrine of opposites has been a subject of intense debate. Some later philosophers, particularly Plato and Aristotle, found his ideas difficult to reconcile with traditional logic. Aristotle, in particular, criticized Heraclitus for suggesting that contradictory statements could be true at the same time. In classical logic, the law of non-contradiction states that something cannot be both A and not A simultaneously. Heraclitus, however, challenges this assumption by suggesting that opposites are not mutually exclusive, but rather necessary counterparts. This perspective has been revisited in modern philosophy, particularly in existentialism and post-structuralism, where the notion of binary opposites is often questioned. The unity of opposites also finds strong parallels in Eastern philosophical traditions, particularly Taoism. The concept of yin and yang, central to Taoist thought, reflects a similar idea. Opposing forces are interconnected and interdependent. Just as Heraclitus sees conflict as essential to harmony, Taoism teaches that opposites such as light and dark, male and female, or action and stillness exist in a complementary relationship rather than an absolute opposition. This striking similarity suggests that the insights of Heraclitus may have a broader, universal significance beyond Western philosophy. Heraclitus' doctrine of the unity of opposites presents a radical and transformative view of reality. He teaches us that contradiction is not a sign of error or disorder, but a fundamental principle that governs existence. Whether in nature, human experience, politics, or ethics, opposing forces are not only inevitable but necessary for balance and progress. His insights challenge conventional thinking, urging us to embrace conflict as a creative force rather than something to be feared or eliminated. As we continue exploring Heraclitus' philosophy, the next chapter will delve into his concept of logos, the rational principle that governs the universe and gives coherence to the flux and opposition that define existence. Among the many profound ideas attributed to Heraclitus, none is as fundamental to his philosophy as the concept of logos. The Greek word logos carries multiple meanings, including word, reason, principle, and account. In Heraclitus' thought, however, it takes on a broader, almost cosmic significance. He presents logos as the underlying rational principle that governs the universe, giving structure and order to the flux and opposition that define existence. It is the law that harmonizes the apparent chaos of change, ensuring that transformation follows an intelligible pattern rather than descending into randomness. Heraclitus introduces logos in one of his most famous fragments. Although this logos is eternally valid, yet men are unable to understand it, not only before hearing it, but even after they have heard it for the first time. Here, he suggests that logos is an objective and universal truth, independent of human opinion or perception. Despite its presence in everything, most people fail to recognize or comprehend it. This statement reflects Heraclitus' general view of human ignorance. While reality follows a rational order, individuals often remain blind to it due to their reliance on superficial appearances rather than deep reflection. Unlike later philosophical traditions that view reason as a tool for imposing structure on reality, Heraclitus sees logos as something inherent in reality itself. The world is not rational because humans impose rationality upon it. Rather, it is rational by nature, and human reason is only a reflection of this greater cosmic order. This idea represents an early form of what would later become a key theme in metaphysics: the belief that reality possesses an intrinsic logic that can be discovered through thought and observation. The idea of logos as a universal principle also connects to Heraclitus' doctrines of flux and the unity of opposites. Change is not arbitrary, but follows an ordered process dictated by logos. Similarly, the tension between opposites does not create disorder, but instead maintains balance within the cosmos. War and peace, life and death, creation and destruction. All these forces operate according to a deeper law that ensures their proper function. In this sense, logos serves as a kind of stabilizing force within Heraclitus' otherwise dynamic and fluid vision of reality. Heraclitus' conception of logos has often been interpreted in relation to theology. Some scholars argue that his logos is not just a principle of reason, but also a divine force that governs the universe. In this interpretation, logos is akin to fate or divine will, directing the unfolding of events according to a predetermined order. However, Heraclitus does not explicitly personify logos as a god, nor does he present it as an object of worship. Instead, it appears to function as an impersonal, rational structure that governs existence, neither entirely religious nor purely mechanistic. The influence of Heraclitus' logos on later thought is vast. The Stoic philosophers, for instance, adopted and expanded upon the concept, interpreting logos as the rational principle that permeates nature and provides ethical guidance for human beings. For the Stoics, to live in accordance with logos meant to live in harmony with reason and the natural order. This connection between cosmic order and ethical behavior became a defining feature of their philosophy, demonstrating the lasting impact of Heraclitus' insights. Logos also played a crucial role in the development of early Christian thought. In the Gospel of John, Jesus is identified with the Logos. In the beginning was the Word, Logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This passage suggests a divine intelligence underlying creation, an idea that bears a strong resemblance to Heraclitus' view of a rational principle governing the universe. While the Christian interpretation of logos differs in many ways from Heraclitus' original meaning, the connection highlights the profound and enduring influence of his ideas. The epistemological implications of logos are also significant. If the world follows a rational order, then understanding reality requires aligning one's thoughts with logos. Heraclitus criticizes those who fail to perceive this truth, stating, "Many do not understand such things as they encounter, nor do they learn by experience, but they think they do." This suggests that wisdom is not merely about accumulating information, but about perceiving the deeper rational structure of existence. In this way, Heraclitus foreshadows later philosophical debates on the nature of knowledge, perception, and truth. Despite its importance, Heraclitus' concept of logos remains elusive and open to multiple interpretations. Some scholars see it as a metaphysical principle, while others view it as a logical or linguistic tool. The ambiguity of his fragments has led to centuries of debate over the precise nature of logos and its role in his philosophy. Yet, this very ambiguity is part of what makes Heraclitus' thoughts so enduring. His ideas resist easy categorization, inviting ongoing exploration and reinterpretation. Heraclitus' concept of logos provides a crucial foundation for his philosophical system. It serves as the rational order that underlies the ever-changing world, harmonizing the flux and opposition that define reality. Whether interpreted as a cosmic law, a divine intelligence, or an ethical guide, logos remains one of the most influential ideas in Western philosophy. As we continue to examine Heraclitus' legacy, the next chapter will explore his views on human nature and the role of wisdom in understanding the universe. Heraclitus' philosophy is not only concerned with the nature of the cosmos, but also with human nature and the way individuals perceive and engage with reality. His insights into human behavior, knowledge, and wisdom reveal a deeply critical and often pessimistic view of mankind. He believed that most people live in ignorance, failing to understand the true nature of the world. However, he also suggested that wisdom is attainable for those who seek to comprehend the deeper rational order, the logos that governs existence. One of his most striking assertions is, "Most men do not think things through, even though they experience them, nor do they understand what they learn, but they seem to themselves to do so." This statement highlights his belief that people often mistake superficial familiarity for true knowledge. Simply encountering something does not mean one understands it. True wisdom requires deep reflection and the ability to recognize the patterns underlying change and opposition. This criticism extends beyond intellectual laziness. It suggests that many people live in self-imposed blindness, content with illusions rather than seeking the truth. Heraclitus frequently contrasts the wise with the many, a distinction that runs throughout his philosophy. He states, "One man is worth 10,000 if he is wise." This radical statement emphasizes the rarity and value of true wisdom. Unlike the masses, who are trapped in their limited perceptions, the wise individual perceives the deeper order of reality. This elitist perspective suggests that wisdom is not something easily attained, nor is it shared equally among all people. Instead, it is the result of rigorous thinking, self-examination, and an alignment with the natural order of things. For Heraclitus, the pursuit of wisdom is intrinsically tied to an understanding of change and conflict. Since reality is in constant flux, true wisdom consists of embracing this dynamism rather than resisting it. He warns against rigid thinking, which leads individuals to seek permanence where none exists. The wise person, in contrast, understands that adaptability and insight into the interconnectedness of opposites are essential for navigating life successfully. This idea resonates with later philosophical traditions, particularly Stoicism, which teaches that wisdom consists in accepting and working with the natural flow of events. Another key aspect of Heraclitus' view of human nature is his emphasis on self-knowledge. He echoes the Delphic maxim, "Know thyself," stressing the importance of introspection and self-awareness. Without understanding one's own nature, an individual cannot hope to understand the world. This perspective aligns with his broader critique of ignorance. Those who fail to examine their own thoughts and motivations are doomed to remain blind to the deeper truths of existence. By contrast, the wise individual continuously questions, reflects, and seeks greater understanding. HERACLITUS also suggests that the soul plays a crucial role in human nature. He describes the soul as self-increasing and capable of depth, stating, "You will not find the limits of the soul, even if you travel every road. So deep is its measure." This statement suggests that human consciousness is vast and complex, perhaps even infinite in its potential. Unlike those who believe that knowledge is finite, HERACLITUS envisions an endless process of discovery and expansion. This idea presents the soul as something dynamic, mirroring the ever-changing nature of the cosmos itself. Yet, despite the soul's potential, most people fail to develop it fully. HERACLITUS criticizes those who indulge in base desires and material pursuits, suggesting that they squander their deeper capacities. He describes them as sleepwalkers, people who move through life without awareness or understanding. This metaphor reflects his broader critique of human ignorance. While most people physically exist, they are not truly awake to reality. Their lack of intellectual and spiritual engagement leaves them disconnected from the logos, preventing them from achieving wisdom. In his ethical views, HERACLITUS does not provide a rigid moral code, but instead suggests that virtue consists in living in accordance with nature and the logos. Unlike moralists who prescribe fixed rules, he believes that ethical behavior emerges from understanding the deeper order of existence. This perspective aligns with later philosophical traditions, particularly Stoicism, which advocates for aligning one's actions with reason and the natural flow of the universe. HERACLITUS does not advocate for conventional morality, but rather for a way of life that embraces reality as it truly is. HERACLITUS' perspective on human nature has profound implications for society and leadership. He implies that most people are unfit to rule or make wise decisions because they lack insight into the deeper structure of reality. Instead, leadership should belong to those who have attained wisdom and understand the nature of change. His critique of the masses as ignorant and misguided suggests an aristocratic view of governance, where knowledge and wisdom, not popularity or birthright, should determine authority. This perspective influenced later political philosophies that emphasized the rule of the wise, including those of Plato and the Stoics. HERACLITUS presents a vision of human nature that is both critical and aspirational. While he condemns the ignorance of the many, he also holds up the possibility of wisdom for those who seek it. The key to understanding both oneself and the world lies in recognizing the principles of change, opposition, and logos. True wisdom requires effort, introspection, and the willingness to accept reality as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. As we move forward in exploring HERACLITUS' philosophy, the next chapter will examine his views on fate, necessity, and the role of divine order in the cosmos. One of the most profound and complex aspects of HERACLITUS' philosophy is his view on fate, necessity, and divine order. While he does not provide a systematic theological doctrine, his fragments suggest a deep engagement with the nature of destiny and the forces that govern existence. He presents a world that is not ruled by blind chance, but by an underlying order, one that operates according to rational principles. This cosmic law, often identified with logos, ensures that everything unfolds in a structured and meaningful way. However, this does not mean that individuals have absolute control over their lives. Instead, HERACLITUS suggests that human actions are bound by necessity, ananke, a force that dictates the course of events in accordance with a natural order. A key fragment reflecting this idea states, "All things happen according to logos." This suggests that everything, from the movement of the stars to the rise and fall of human civilizations, follows a rational pattern. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who attributed events to the whims of the gods, HERACLITUS insists on an impersonal and law-like structure governing the universe. This view aligns with his broader philosophy. Just as change and conflict are necessary for balance, so too is necessity an inescapable force that shapes all existence. Heraclitus does not deny the existence of the divine, but his concept of the divine differs from traditional Greek religious thought. Instead of anthropomorphic gods who intervene in human affairs arbitrarily, he envisions a universal intelligence, perhaps synonymous with logos, that governs the cosmos. He states, "The gods are in everything." This suggests a pantheistic or at least an immanent view of divinity, in which the divine is not separate from the world, but embedded within its structure. His God is not a being that can be prayed to for favor, but rather a principle that maintains order through necessity and balance. Necessity, in Heraclitus' philosophy, is not a rigid determinism that eliminates all freedom, but rather a guiding force that ensures the coherence of the universe. He asserts, character is destiny. This statement implies that while external events are shaped by necessity, individual fate is determined by one's nature and choices. People are not entirely powerless. Rather, they shape their futures through their actions, which in turn align with the broader structure of necessity. This perspective differs from fatalism, as it suggests a balance between predetermined order and human responsibility. Despite this, Heraclitus acknowledges that human beings often resist the necessity that governs their lives. He observes, "Men do not understand how what is at variance with itself agrees with itself." This suggests that people often fail to recognize the wisdom of necessity, perceiving conflict and hardship as meaningless suffering rather than integral to the cosmic balance. The wise individual, by contrast, understands that what appears as misfortune is simply part of a larger, necessary order. This insight resonates with later Stoic philosophy, which teaches that wisdom consists in accepting the natural order of events with tranquility. Heraclitus' emphasis on fate and necessity also has ethical implications. If everything happens according to logos, then moral conduct consists in aligning oneself with this order rather than resisting it. He suggests that those who live in ignorance of logos bring misfortune upon themselves, while those who recognize and accept it achieve a form of inner harmony. This idea anticipates later notions of living in accordance with nature, a principle that would become central to Stoicism and other philosophical traditions. The connection between necessity and justice is another important theme in Heraclitus' thought. He states, "The sun will not overstep its bounds. If it does, the Erinyes, ministers of justice, will find it out." This fragment suggests that even celestial bodies operate within fixed laws, and any violation of this order brings correction. The Erinyes, traditionally depicted as goddesses of vengeance, represent the principle that cosmic law is self-regulating. Just as natural forces maintain balance in the physical world, so too does necessity ensure justice in human affairs. This view implies that wrongdoing is not merely an ethical failure, but a disruption of the natural order, one that will inevitably be corrected. While Heraclitus' philosophy embraces necessity, it does not lead to passivity. Instead, it encourages individuals to understand the forces that shape their existence and to act in accordance with them. He does not advocate surrender, but rather wisdom, the ability to recognize necessity and work with it rather than against it. This perspective aligns with his broader teachings on flux and opposition. Just as one must embrace change rather than resist it, so too must one accept the necessity that governs life. The idea that fate and necessity guide all things had a lasting impact on later philosophical and religious traditions. In Stoicism, the concept of hymarmene, fated order, closely resembles Heraclitus' notion of necessity, emphasizing the importance of living in harmony with an unchangeable cosmic plan. In Christian theology, the idea of divine providence similarly echoes Heraclitus' belief that all things unfold according to a rational structure. Even in modern philosophy, debates about determinism and free will continue to engage with questions that Heraclitus first posed over 2,000 years ago. Heraclitus' vision of fate, necessity, and divine order presents a world governed by rational laws rather than chaos or capricious deities. While individuals are subject to necessity, they are not entirely powerless. Their character and choices shape their destiny within the constraints of the cosmic order. By recognizing and embracing this necessity, one attains wisdom and inner harmony. As we continue our exploration of Heraclitus' thought, the next chapter will examine his influence on later philosophical traditions and how his ideas have endured throughout history. Heraclitus' ideas did not vanish with his lifetime. Instead, they left a lasting impact on Western philosophy, influencing a wide range of thinkers from antiquity to modern times. His doctrines of flux, logos, the unity of opposites, and necessity have inspired some of the most profound philosophical movements, including Stoicism, Platonism, Christian theology, and even existentialism. While his enigmatic style made his ideas difficult to interpret, later philosophers found in his fragments a rich source of reflection on the nature of reality, knowledge, and human existence. One of the first philosophical traditions to embrace Heraclitus' thought was Stoicism. The Stoics, particularly Chrysippus, adopted and expanded upon his concept of logos, interpreting it as a divine rational principle that pervades the universe. For the Stoics, living in harmony with logos meant accepting the natural order and maintaining tranquility in the face of change. This closely resembles Heraclitus' notion that wisdom consists in understanding and embracing the necessary transformations of existence. The Stoic principle of amor fati, or the love of fate, echoes Heraclitus' belief that everything unfolds according to necessity and that human beings must align themselves with this cosmic law rather than resist it. Platonism also engages deeply with Heraclitus' ideas, though often in opposition to them. Plato, in his dialogue Cratylus, presents Heraclitus as a philosopher who argued that reality is in a state of constant flux, making stable knowledge impossible. While Plato ultimately rejects this radical view in favor of his own theory of unchanging forms, he acknowledges the fundamental truth in Heraclitus' idea that the material world is ever-changing. Aristotle, likewise, critiques Heraclitus for seemingly denying the possibility of stable knowledge, but still acknowledges the importance of his insights into change and contradiction. Thus, even in opposition, Heraclitus' influence remained strong in the foundational debates of Greek philosophy. Beyond Greek philosophy, Heraclitus' concept of logos found an important place in Christian thought. The Gospel of John begins with the famous verse, "In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God." This passage reflects a transformation of Heraclitus' idea of logos into a divine, creative principle identified with Christ. Early Christian theologians, such as Justin Martyr and Clement of Alexandria, interpreted logos as the rational order of the universe, a concept that they believed Heraclitus had glimpsed, but that Christianity had fully revealed. This demonstrates how deeply Heraclitus' ideas penetrated religious thought, bridging the gap between ancient philosophy and Christian doctrine. Medieval and Renaissance thinkers also found value in Heraclitus' philosophy, often drawing upon his insights to support their own intellectual frameworks. In the Renaissance, scholars such as Giordano Bruno and Michel de Montaigne admired Heraclitus' emphasis on the unity of opposites and the ever-changing nature of existence. They saw in his philosophy a precursor to modern scientific and humanistic inquiry, which sought to understand nature through observation rather than through fixed dogma. The idea that opposites define and sustain one another, light and dark, life and death, war and peace, found echoes in later dialectical philosophies, particularly in Hegel's dialectics and Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence. The German philosopher G.W.F. Hegel, 1770 to 1831, explicitly recognized Heraclitus as one of the earliest dialecticians. Hegel's dialectical method, which emphasizes the interplay of contradictions leading to higher levels of understanding, strongly resembles Heraclitus' idea that struggle and opposition are fundamental to reality. Hegel famously stated, "There is no proposition of Heraclitus that I have not adopted in my logic." This underscores how central Heraclitus' thought was to the development of German idealism, which in turn influenced Marxist dialectics and existentialist thought. Friedrich Nietzsche, another philosopher profoundly shaped by Heraclitus, admired his rejection of absolute stability and his emphasis on becoming over being. Nietzsche saw Heraclitus as a kindred spirit who recognized that life is defined by struggle, transformation, and the necessity of embracing change. Nietzsche's famous doctrine of eternal recurrence, the idea that life must be affirmed in all its cyclical repetitions, mirrors Heraclitus' belief that reality is in a state of perpetual flux, governed by an underlying rational order. In this sense, Heraclitus' thought served as a foundation for modern existential and perspectival philosophies, which emphasize the dynamic and interpretative nature of reality. In contemporary philosophy, Heraclitus continues to be a source of inspiration. Modern physics, particularly quantum mechanics and chaos theory, reflects his notion that change and uncertainty are inherent aspects of nature. The idea that matter is in constant motion and that opposites are deeply interwoven resonates with the discoveries of modern science. Even in the realm of psychology and cognitive science, Heraclitus' insights into human perception, knowledge, and the limitations of the senses remain relevant. Heraclitus' influence extends beyond academic philosophy and science into art, literature, and political thought. Writers and poets have long been inspired by his imagery of fire, rivers, and cycles of transformation, using his ideas to explore themes of change, identity, and time. Political theorists, too, have drawn upon his vision of conflict and unity, applying it to understand the dynamics of power, revolution, and societal transformation. His belief that opposition creates harmony has been used to explain the workings of democracy, the tension between progress and tradition, and the necessity of struggle in human development. The legacy of Heraclitus extends far beyond his own time, shaping some of the most important movements in philosophy, religion, science, and art. His vision of a world in flux, governed by an underlying rational order, continues to inspire and challenge thinkers across disciplines. Whether in ancient Stoicism, Christian theology, German idealism, or modern science, Heraclitus' insights remain as relevant today as they were over 2,000 years ago. In the next chapter, we will explore the enduring relevance of his philosophy in contemporary debates about reality, knowledge, and human existence. More than 2,000 years after his death, Heraclitus' philosophy remains profoundly relevant to modern discussions about science, metaphysics, psychology, and human society. His ideas about change, logos, the unity of opposites, and the nature of wisdom continue to provide a rich framework for understanding the complexities of reality. While his fragments are often obscure, they nonetheless anticipate many of the key insights of contemporary thought, demonstrating the timeless nature of his philosophical inquiries. One of the most striking aspects of Heraclitus' thought is his doctrine of change, encapsulated in the famous phrase, "You cannot step twice into the same river." This idea finds remarkable parallels in modern physics, particularly in the fields of quantum mechanics and relativity theory. The recognition that all matter is in constant motion aligns with Heraclitus' belief that stability is an illusion and that flux defines reality. In the 20th century, physicists such as Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr developed the principle of indeterminacy, which echoes Heraclitus' assertion that the nature of reality is dynamic and never fully graspable. The unpredictability of quantum states mirrors his vision of the world as an ever-changing process rather than a fixed structure. Beyond physics, Heraclitus' philosophy has significant implications for biology and evolutionary theory. The idea that conflict and tension drive transformation closely aligns with Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection. Just as Heraclitus viewed opposition as the source of harmony, modern evolutionary science recognizes that species survive and adapt precisely because of competition and environmental pressures. The process of biological change over time reflects Heraclitus' core insight that stability is a temporary illusion, while transformation is the true nature of existence. Heraclitus' emphasis on logos also finds a strong parallel in contemporary systems theory and complexity science. The idea that seemingly chaotic processes follow an underlying rational order is central to modern understandings of self-organizing systems, from ecosystems to economies. Scientists and mathematicians have discovered that patterns emerge from disorder, much like Heraclitus suggested when he argued that the world, despite its apparent chaos, operates according to an intrinsic rational structure. His belief that everything happens according to logos anticipates today's investigations into the hidden laws governing natural and artificial systems. In the realm of psychology and cognitive science, Heraclitus' insights into perception and human understanding remain deeply relevant. His claim that men do not understand how what is at variance with itself agrees with itself aligns with modern findings in neuroscience, which show that the human brain struggles to process contradictions and ambiguity. Cognitive biases and perceptual limitations often prevent people from recognizing the fluid nature of reality, reinforcing Heraclitus' belief that most individuals fail to perceive the deeper truths of existence. The study of cognitive dissonance, which explores how people resist accepting conflicting information, reflects his assertion that people prefer comfortable illusions to difficult truths. Heraclitus' philosophy also offers valuable insights from modern existentialism and phenomenology. Philosophers such as Martin Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre engage with the idea that human existence is defined by becoming rather than being. Sartre's concept of radical freedom, which asserts that individuals must constantly define themselves through their choices, echoes Heraclitus' belief that the world is in a state of constant flux. Similarly, Heidegger's notion of being toward death, the idea that human life is defined by its finite and ever-changing nature, resonates with Heraclitus' emphasis on impermanence and transformation. Beyond philosophy and science, Heraclitus' insights remain applicable to modern political and social thought. His notion that struggle creates harmony has been used to explain the dynamics of political conflict, economic cycles, and social change. The idea that opposing forces are necessary for progress aligns with contemporary theories of dialectics, market competition, and democratic governance. Political movements, revolutions, and ideological clashes can all be understood through Heraclitus' principle that war is the father of all things, suggesting that conflict, rather than being purely destructive, is often a catalyst for transformation and renewal. Heraclitus' philosophy also resonates with contemporary ethics and environmental thought. His idea that humans must align themselves with the natural order anticipates modern concerns about sustainability and ecological balance. Many environmental philosophers argue that ignoring the dynamic and interconnected nature of ecosystems leads to environmental degradation, a perspective that fits well with Heraclitus' belief that violating the natural order results in inevitable consequences. In this way, his philosophy serves as a warning against human arrogance in attempting to control or resist the fundamental laws of nature. Even in the realm of art and literature, Heraclitus' influence remains strong. Many modern writers, filmmakers, and poets explore themes of impermanence, contradiction, and the search for meaning amid chaos, ideas that are deeply rooted in his philosophy. Postmodern literature, with its emphasis on fragmentation and shifting perspectives, can be seen as a continuation of Heraclitus' belief that truth is never absolute, but always subject to change. Filmmakers such as Andrei Tarkovsky and Christopher Nolan explore time, memory, and the fluid nature of identity, concepts that closely mirror Heraclitus' views on the transience of existence. Heraclitus' philosophy remains strikingly relevant across multiple fields of modern thought. Whether in science, psychology, political theory, or the arts, his insights continue to offer profound ways of understanding the nature of reality, change, and human existence. His emphasis on flux, logos, and the unity of opposites provides a framework for navigating a world that is constantly in motion, filled with contradictions and transformation. While his fragments are ancient, their wisdom speaks directly to the uncertainties and complexities of contemporary life. Heraclitus' enduring legacy lies not only in the specific doctrines he espoused, but also in his profound engagement with the uncertainties of human existence. His philosophy offers a unique perspective on the nature of reality, knowledge, and wisdom, encouraging a shift away from the quest for absolute certainty towards a more dynamic, evolving understanding of the world. In a modern age defined by rapid change, uncertainty, and the constant challenge of adapting to new circumstances, Heraclitus' teachings remain as relevant and vital as ever. At the heart of Heraclitus' philosophy is the recognition that change is the only constant in the universe. This realization stands in stark contrast to traditional, static views of the world, which often seek stability and permanence. Heraclitus' famous assertion that everything flows, pana rei, speaks to the impermanence of all things and the fundamental fluidity of existence. In today's world, marked by technological advances, environmental crises, and political upheaval, Heraclitus' insight that change is inevitable and irreversible offers an important lesson. Rather than resist change, one must learn to navigate it, adapt, and find meaning in the process. Heraclitus' focus on the unity of opposites is another aspect of his thought that has profound implications for modern life. The philosopher argued that conflict and contradiction are not only unavoidable, but necessary for growth and transformation. He wrote that war is the father of all things, implying that the tension between opposing forces is what drives progress and change. This perspective challenges the modern tendency to view conflict as a negative force to be avoided at all costs. Whether in politics, social movements, or personal relationships, Heraclitus' philosophy reminds us that out of conflict often arises innovation, resolution, and deeper understanding. Instead of seeing contradiction as something to eliminate, Heraclitus invites us to see it as part of a larger, unfolding process of balance and harmony. In the realm of personal growth and wisdom, Heraclitus offers a profound lesson in accepting the uncertainty that defines our lives. Unlike many philosophies that seek absolute truths or immutable answers, Heraclitus presents wisdom as the ability to navigate a world of ambiguity and paradox. His concept of logos, the rational principle underlying the universe, suggests that while reality may appear chaotic, it is governed by an intelligible order. To live wisely, according to Heraclitus, is to come to terms with the fluidity and complexity of life while remaining attuned to the deeper, unchanging laws that govern all things. In a contemporary context, this resonates with the idea that wisdom is not the possession of fixed knowledge, but the ability to remain open to change while seeking deeper patterns of understanding. Heraclitus' views on knowledge further contribute to his legacy. For him, true understanding arises not from static facts, but from recognizing the interconnectedness and continuous transformation of all things. In his view, knowledge is not an accumulation of immutable truths, but an awareness of the dynamic nature of existence. This perspective challenges the modern obsession with certainty, emphasizing instead the importance of questioning, adapting, and embracing the unknown. In a world where scientific progress often brings new questions rather than answers, Heraclitus' thought encourages us to see the quest for knowledge as a never-ending journey rather than a destination. In the field of ethics, Heraclitus provides a radical challenge to traditional moral systems. His belief that everything is in constant flux leads him to question the idea of fixed moral standards. He suggests that human behavior, too, is shaped by the same laws of change and opposition that govern the cosmos. This perspective allows for a more nuanced understanding of morality, one that accounts for the complexities and contradictions inherent in human life. Ethical wisdom, for Heraclitus, lies in understanding the forces that shape human behavior and acting in accordance with the natural order, even when that order appears to be chaotic or contradictory. This ethical fluidity has contemporary applications, particularly in debates about moral relativism and the need for ethics to adapt to changing social, cultural, and technological contexts. Heraclitus' influence can be felt not only in philosophy, but in other fields such as psychology, sociology, and political theory. His emphasis on change and the need to understand and integrate opposing forces resonates with the work of Carl Jung, who explored the concept of the shadow self, the unconscious parts of the personality that contain contradictions and repressed desires. Heraclitus' view that the integration of opposites is necessary for personal growth mirrors Jung's belief in the importance of embracing the fullness of one's nature. Furthermore, Heraclitus' insight that conflict drives transformation echoes in the modern sociological understanding of social change, where movements often arise from the tensions and contradictions within a society. In political philosophy, Heraclitus' views on the unity of opposites and the necessary role of conflict in societal change have been invoked to understand the dynamics of revolution and reform. Political theorists who emphasize the dialectical process, such as Karl Marx, drew inspiration from Heraclitus' idea that society is a field of tension and contradiction. The Marxist understanding of class struggle and the belief that change emerges through conflict align closely with Heraclitus' vision of a world defined by struggle and opposition. This perspective offers a framework for understanding how political systems evolve through conflict and how transformations in power often emerge from the tensions between different social and political forces. Heraclitus also contributes to our understanding of individual identity and self-knowledge. His emphasis on the ever-changing nature of the self suggests that identity is not something fixed or permanent, but something that evolves in response to life experiences, conflicts, and choices. In a modern context, this aligns with contemporary psychological theories that emphasize the fluidity of identity, particularly in the realms of self-identity and gender. Heraclitus' notion that we are constantly becoming offers a liberating perspective. Rather than feeling bound by fixed categories or past experiences, we can embrace the idea that who we are is always in the process of becoming. Finally, Heraclitus' philosophy invites us to engage with life as a dynamic, interconnected whole rather than a series of isolated events or fixed truths. His thoughts challenge the modern tendency to compartmentalize life into manageable categories, urging us instead to embrace the complexity and interdependence of all things. In a time when the pace of change can feel overwhelming, Heraclitus' wisdom encourages us to accept the fluidity of existence while seeking deeper patterns of understanding. His legacy teaches us that wisdom lies not in mastering the world through rigid control, but in learning to flow with it, to understand its rhythms, and to find meaning in the ever-changing tides of life. In conclusion, Heraclitus' legacy is one of philosophical richness and depth. His teachings on change, conflict, logos, and wisdom continue to resonate across disciplines, offering profound insights into the nature of existence. In a modern world characterized by uncertainty and transformation, Heraclitus provides us with a framework for navigating the complexities of life with resilience, adaptability, and understanding. His thought challenges us to confront the paradoxes of our own existence and to recognize the dynamic, interconnected nature of all things. In doing so, he offers timeless wisdom for anyone seeking to understand the world and their place within it.